Good afternoon and welcome into the Boston University Parents Program radio edition for December 2016. I'm joined by my colleague Christy Loring in the Parents Program Office, and we are thrilled that you're able to join us today. We have a full and complete program today with a lot of great content which we'll discuss. But Christy, I know you wanted to say hello. And
we certainly do, and it's the end of the semester, and we do have a lot to talk about with housing here on campus, but also more specifically the thought of moving off campus, which your cherubs may be talking to you about moving off campus when they're home for winter break. So we want you to be prepared with all of the information you need to know to have this conversation with them. And that said, I want to introduce my colleague, Kim Santo. She is the Assistant Director at Judicial Affairs, but off-campus housing falls under your purview.
Yes.
So we have an expert, and I will say on a personal note, when a parent has called me and said, my son wants to move off campus, what do? I said, you call Kim Santo. So we have a great resource here joining us. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
you know, Christy, every year it seems like maybe I'm getting older, but the time seems to fly by.
It certainly does.
It's absolutely amazing that we are sitting here. It's December.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving's in our rearview mirror. The semester is almost over. And Christy is so right, because so often during the intersection winter break between the holidays and New Year's, after the completion of first semester, it is enormously popular for young students, sons and daughters, to come home and talk with their mom and dad about their next semester plans. And that is a great time that you have, to quote Christy, your cherubs at home, and you can sit down with them at the kitchen table and really have a conversation that will be engaging and hopefully productive.
Absolutely.
Because parents need to know all the time about what's going on in their kids' lives.
That's right.
And before we continue on, I do want to say a few words about parents and students will be receiving some correspondence from the university about students who choose to want to remain in on-campus housing. There's something called a residence license agreement, which we often refer to as a housing contract on campus. And those go out on or around the 1st of February. And to participate in the Boston University housing lottery system, which means your son or daughter wants to either retain their current room for same room selection or choose another residence on campus where they want to live and who they want to live with. In order to participate in that housing lottery system, they need to put down, or mom and dad needs to put down, a housing deposit. That deposit has been consistently at $600, and students can either charge it to their BU account, or parents or guardians or loved ones can make a deposit on their account via any method that you would like. But that way, once it's in, and that is due by Tuesday, February 28th, 2017 at 5 o'clock. And they're pretty stern about that, because they give you 1 month to participate in that process of putting down the deposit. Once the deposit's in, then you're sort of done deal until your son or daughter goes through the actual room selection
And
process.
that's an important point that you make, Daryl, because that is a non-refundable deposit. So that $600 is, and that agreement is securing your spot on campus for the next year.
Thank you for highlighting that, because so often we hear from parents and students that once they put down the deposit, then things change and the conversations begin. Well, I have an opportunity to move off campus because my best friends or my teammates or my sorority members have found a place and I want to move off campus, and boy, I would love that $600 back.
Of course. In
And
fact, we hear that quite a bit.
we do, and the answer generally is no.
Right.
It's non-refundable, and they hold students and parents accountable to that. So be mindful of that, because no one wants to be out that kind of money these days.
No, that's
Or
a
any day.
significant amount of money.
Absolutely. So I think you pointed out, Christy, that around mid-March, once Boston University housing lottery numbers are assigned,
Sure.
then students will actually be given an appointment. And they, I believe, select right online these days, right?
I believe it's all done online.
Yep.
Exactly right.
So be mindful of that, and certainly the Office of Housing has an enormous amount of resources online, bu.edu/housing. The assignments office at Boston University's phone number is 617-353-3511, and their electronic email address is housing@bu.edu. So those are some tips just as folks are starting the conversation about whether I put down a deposit for next year that reserves you a spot on campus. Boston University, as most parents know, houses almost 80% of our undergraduate student population on campus, nearly 12,000 beds on campus. So it's a very, very popular thing to do, to stay on campus all 4 years, and we're biased, but we encourage students to give that a serious consideration. We love students being on campus.
Most definitely. And Daryl, that raises a point, because the housing options vary so much, because there are so many different dorms, apartments. And Mom had written in on Facebook, Melissa, and asked if a student has some accessibility issues, how do they know which dorm is going to be the best fit for them? So my first recommendation would be for that student to reach out to Disability Services if they have not done so already, so that they can work with a practitioner there to find out what will be the best residence on campus. I would also suggest too that although we don't give tours of the different dorms, that certainly there might be someone that you know in a dorm that you're interested in potentially living at. Ask that student to bring you in for a visit, to check out the facilities, to see the accessibility, to see if indeed that is a resident that you're interested in living. And for Disability Services, it's 617-353-3658. And their email is access@bu.edu, and their website is www.bu.edu/disability. And they would be a great resource for your students.
That's a wonderful point, Christy, because not only when you say mobility issues, there are a wide range of mobility issues. It's just not someone who might be either temporarily or permanently disabled or in a wheelchair, but there are other mobility issues to consider, and certainly the Office of Disability Services, the great folks down there, have the ability and the access to all sorts of resources. I also want to point out that if you explore that Boston University housing website, many of the floor plans, not all, but many of the floor plans are actually online, and you can get a sense as to the makeup of the dormitories or residences or apartments or suites or low rises or high rises or elevated buildings and all that. It's just a ton of information online, so good to do your homework in advance.
Absolutely, that's a great point, that those floor plans are available. You can also see on their website that they have some videos that will almost do this panoramic scan of a room, so you can get a real sense of what it looks like and the feel and the space that you're dealing with.
Technology, just like we had when we were in college.
A paper form.
Exactly. So, having said all of that, be mindful of those are the kind of concerns and questions that your parents are going to receive when their sons and daughters go home, and that conversation is going to begin. Housing is a great resource. The Office of Residence Life staff is a tremendous resource, and certainly anyone in the Dean of Students office is a tremendous resource. We encourage parents that if you get stuck or you feel like you get a question that you can't answer, to either email us or call us, and we're happy to respond. Be mindful that around the 23rd of December through January 3rd, the university is closed, and you'll get a voicemail, but certainly we'll be happy to get back to you.
Absolutely.
And on that note, should we shift gears?
I think we should, because we want to make sure that we're talking about off-campus housing as well as on.
Wonderful.
And there are a lot more unknowns, I think, when it comes to off-campus housing. Great.
Yeah. So what would you like to know?
Okay, Kim. First, let's give this the, as Dean Elmo likes to say, the 35,000-foot view.
Okay, sure.
What goes into the decision or having the conversation, discussing with mom and dad about factors that students should consider before they approach mom and dad and guardian about, I want to move off campus?
I think the biggest thing to consider is the cost. I know that a lot of students, they look at going off campus and they hear some friends might want to go off campus and they're thinking, well, it's going to be cheaper. It's less expensive than if I stayed in either the dormitory style with the meal plan, or if I selected an apartment style residence here on campus. They think they're going to be saving some money.
Not for the meal plan.
Exactly, right. The apartment style here on campus, you opt not for the meal plan. So a lot of students believe that they're saving a significant amount of money by moving off campus. I actually tried to put some financials together here, and when I added everything up, it looked, at first blush, it looked like the student would be saving a little bit of money by going off campus. However, that's only factoring in the rent. And I was basing this on a 2-bedroom apartment in the Allston-Brighton area going for $2,345. In fact, that unit happens to be listed on our off-campus website. Okay. But then you don't take into account, the rent does not take into account utilities such as the electric bill, which could be upwards of $80 a month. If you have 2 people together, all right, you split it 50-50, it's $40 a month. Cable internet could be upwards of $100. Divide that by 2 people, you have about $50. Food and groceries, I think I was conservative when I estimated throughout the month about $300, sometimes $400 food bill, depending upon which grocery store you are shopping at, right? And then transportation costs. How far away are you from the campus? Do you need to have a car? You have to worry about gas. Where are you going to be parking the car? And if you're coming in by the T, the MBTA, you're going to have to purchase a monthly Charlie card, which can run you $84.50. So when you add it all together, you're actually paying a little bit more money by going off campus. Plus, you lose the convenience of living on the campus.
Without getting too much into the weeds with money, in addition to all that, you have to pay for Wi-Fi and you have to pay for cable, which oftentimes is not included in an off-campus residence.
Exactly.
And it all depends upon, of course, what one's budget is and what one's interests are in terms of what kind of amenities one wants.
And Kim, I will add on a personal note, when I moved to the Brighton area, something that I hadn't factored in my own budget was I had a car, but I did not have a parking spot, and my apartment and that rental did not include parking. So then I had to find a parking spot I could A, rent, and B, that I could afford to pay for. So that ran me, back in the day, I think at least $100 a month.
Yeah, a lot of students don't think about that. And if you're in a neighborhood of Boston, you could also apply for a city parking permit. It's free, there's no charge, but that doesn't guarantee you a space on the street. It just gets you the permit for the car. So there's the hassle when there's a snow emergency. Where do you put your car? Because you have to get the cars off the street. If you find an apartment in the town of Brookline, which is adjacent to the BU campus, there is no overnight street parking in Brookline, so that's something else you have to consider. So there's all these different factors involved with the cost and thinking about, how inconvenienced do you want to be by going off campus.
And over above all the things that we've already said about the factoring in the decision of what factors that you should consider when you move off campus, I oftentimes hear all kinds of stories from parents and from students. They move off campus and then they don't think about, well, what do I do when my toilet is backed up? What do I do when I lose hot water? What do I do when my key gets broken into the core and I can't get in my apartment? All of those things, and I could go on and on and on, but those are sort of maintenance, upkeep, residential factors that are all taken care of at Boston University by dialing one phone number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. When you're off campus, you have to locate that locksmith. And they run $150 to $250 an hour. You have to find that plumber. You have to find that electrician when the fuse is gone. And sometimes, quite honestly, I think a lot of people know this, landlords aren't local. They are, what's the word? They are absentee landlords. So those are things to consider as well, on top of all the other items.
That's an excellent point, Daryl, and I think you're right. Many of them are absentee landlords, and so you might put in a call that you need maintenance, but there's no guarantee that that will be fulfilled right away, that
That's
that will
right.
be fixed. So
The really good property owners, they'll actually have a property management company that manages the building. So if I'm the landlord and I live out of state, but I have a professional company managing the building, that information will be posted in the lobby of the apartment building or the house, and you can call them 24 hours a day. But again, the response time might not be as quick as what you have here on the BU campus. Yeah.
And other things to consider on that note as well, in terms of response time, many of these management companies are overseeing 2, 3, 4, 6
Exactly.
buildings all
Yeah.
over the city of Boston in many, many different neighborhoods. And while I'm trying to get in my apartment, I might have to wait upwards of an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
Or if it's in the middle of the night, you're going to have a long time to wait. So
Exactly.
just be mindful of that and consider that.
And Kim, you have been so thorough in putting together this budget, and you remind me of when I know of a parent whose son was so eager to move off campus that he put together a PowerPoint presentation for his parents to say, here are the reasons why I should move off campus
See,
and why
that's how you
it's
do
a
it.
better deal. But I will tell you that despite the PowerPoint presentation, parents said no. So, just a really interesting to do, that to be very thoughtful in this decision-making process. And another thing that's financial that I want to point out is when you're looking for an apartment and you find one, you're going to be paying a first month, a last month, a security, and often an agent's fee. And for a student, for anyone, quite honestly, to come up with that amount of money is very significant. So that's something that I want people to be mindful as well, that the upfront cost of moving into an apartment is significant.
Sure. So based on this particular example, rent being $23.45, split between two people, it's $1172.50. But now, as Christy just said, you're adding on the first month's rent, the last month's rent, the broker's fee if you went through an agent, and there also could be a separate lock key fee. But you're looking, when you add that in total, $9,380 divided by two people, $4,690 that you owe at the time that you signed the lease. So that doesn't take into the rest of the month, the other 10 months of the year with the rent. So it's very
That's
expensive.
significant. And I have to imagine that oftentimes students are going to be looking to their parents to help with that significant cost.
Sure, because the parents, they're actually going to end up being the co-signers or the co-guarantors on the leases. In fact, 99.9% of the leases here in Boston, the landlords and the realtors are going to want a parent as a co-signer on the lease.
That's almost standard, right?
Yeah.
I hear that oftentimes. Students cannot conduct that sort of legal contract of renting an apartment on their own.
Correct.
So that's another important consideration for the parent as well as the student, that they're going to be the co-signer of the lease.
Exactly.
You know, we're coming up on a break very, very shortly, in about a minute, and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. But I think that we can, when we do return, sort of walk into the whole process. Once a decision has been made to move off campus, how do I go about looking for an apartment? Who do I talk to? What neighborhoods do I consider? When do I start doing that? And all of those kind of questions that, if you haven't done it before, you have to consider.
And it really can be daunting in the
Yes.
midst of all your schoolwork to
Yeah, it's a
also
lot of
be
work.
finding an apartment.
That's like a separate job, you know.
It is. And for so many parents who are not local or regional, they could be in Florida or in California or around the world. As Christy pointed out, it can be very, very daunting, that it's a scary thing. And while you entrust many, many responsibilities to your sons and daughters, this is something that is very, very important, because we can tell you, sadly, dozens of stories where parents and students have been taken advantage of and have been victimized when they try to either cut corners or don't go through a professional realtor and use online social platforms. The one that comes to mind oftentimes is Craigslist or something like that. It's just those kinds of things that we really should stay away from. But we will continue that conversation when we come back after our break. Welcome back to the Boston University Parents Program. radio edition. I think it is, I know it's December 2016, and we are thrilled that you're able to join us today. I am joined by my colleague Christy and our very special guest today, Kim Santo from the Office of Judicial Affairs and Off-Campus Services. And we want to continue our conversation about the whole discussion about moving off-campus or considering moving off-campus. And we want to remind also parents that if they do have a question, you can post it on Facebook, and we will try to address as many as we can during this next couple segments. So now that we've considered, okay, we've decided to move off campus, how does a student go about identifying resources and services to find what other important factors to consider?
All right, that's
And if that's not enough, I want to add just one more. When do you do it? When do you start?
Now.
Now.
And then now, yes.
Now,
Okay.
yes.
Right. Not then, but now.
Yesterday.
Yesterday,
Yes.
exactly.
In the midst of finals, start your apartment search.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's never too early to start your apartment search for the following September. So for September 2017, I've heard from realtors that the market for that time period tends to open up now January, and it peaks the middle of the spring, and then not that it expires in May, but the inventory is certainly depleted at that point. But a lot of students, they'll actually start looking after May, June, July, and that's not to say that there isn't anything available, but as I said, you might not find as much out there as the desired neighborhood, the type of accommodations that you're looking for, and the rent will also be a little bit higher because landlords know at that point in the summertime you kind of go into desperation mode, so they might tack on a couple extra $100 there, and they're allowed to do that. They're within their legal rights to do that. Nothing says that they can't. So start as soon as possible. So your sons and daughters are going to be going home for the intercession. Definitely take that time. They're going to have a lot of free time to go online. And my first resource that I would recommend is going to our off-campus services website listing service. That address, yes, we have these handy information cards in our office. You're going to go to offcampus.bu.edu. There's no www or /, it's just offcampus.bu.edu. Now when you get there, it's a mobile-friendly site, so if you want to check on your phone, you can do it there, but if you have a tablet, a computer, certainly sit down and do it there a little more comfortably. When you get to the website, you'll have the option to sign up. So as long as you have your student, your email address, your account, and your Kerberos password, that's what you use to sign up and to log in. So if you haven't been to the website before, you're going to need to sign up first. And for parents, if you would like to use the website, you're welcome to.
Great.
So you don't have a BU account, obviously, but you can actually register if you have a Gmail or a Hotmail or Yahoo, whatever.
Like a guest, right?
Exactly, as a guest. And you'll open up a guest account, which will remain active, I believe it's for 30 days. And then if you want to renew that, it's at the discretion of the company that actually manages the website, Off Campus Partners. They are fantastic with their customer support. They manage not only BU's website, but also MIT, Harvard, Boston College, Northeastern, Suffolk, Bentley, and I believe there's one other institution coming on board. So there's about 7 or 8 of us here in the Boston area that we're all part of this consortium. And what I like about that from a safety standpoint is that if any one of us, any of our institutions, we receive word that there's a listing on one of our websites that the landlord maybe is providing misleading information, not advertising something that's totally accurate, or has a bad reputation and somehow got onto the website, posted it, we can actually have that removed from all of our websites. That's what Off-Campus Partners can do for us.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And if you're looking for roommates, there's also a roommate matching service. You can create a roommate profile and you can choose, the flip side of our information card, you can choose to have it visible to just the BU community, or you can also have it viewable on member websites that choose to allow their students to sort of like cross-register. So I believe Boston College is a part of that, Northeastern, Suffolk, and MIT right now, that you can actually advertise that you're looking for a roommate to those other schools. So not just limited to BU.
And Kim, I have to say that I have gone online, I have registered as a guest, I have used this.
Doesn't it look great?
Referring, and it's fantastic. And you can be as specific as you want in terms of, bedrooms, bathrooms, rent. So it's a very user-friendly, very easy to sign up for, and I feel very good about referring it.
I know we gave the website and the URL address, but what I think we'll do is we'll take a photograph of this and we'll upload it
It's a great
to the
idea.
Parents Program Facebook account. That way it will always be there and folks can refer to it, and the address is here as well.
Yes, and we also have a Facebook page. So if you go onto Facebook and you search for Boston University Off-Campus Services, that's us. Or if you make it to our website, we do have a link to our Facebook page. So I'm the primary administrator for the Facebook page, so I'll post relevant articles, concerns, issues, special events that are coming up, such as we have an off-campus housing fair that's coming up in February 8th to be exact. And a lot of folks have said, Kim, why are you having it in the dead of winter, right? Who's going to want to come to a fair then? Well, as Daryl and Christy said in the beginning, we're trying to time it so that students that are thinking about going off campus, they can come to the fair, talk with realtors, with representatives. Department of Boston Police, a lot of housing experts, become informed consumers, because then at the end of February 28th, that's when the BU residence license agreement is due. So by having it February 8th, it gives you a couple of weeks to sort of thing and make that final decision. Are you going to stay on or are you going to go off? So that's why we have it at that time of the year. Okay.
We talked a lot about staying on campus and all the amenity factors. As a student and parents are considering moving off campus, what are some of the unknowns that come up oftentimes, the safety factors that students should be well aware of? I mean, what immediately comes to mind is fire safety and electrical units and smoke detectors and heat sensors and CO2, carbon monoxide detectors. All of that stuff, of course, is mandated by law in the city of Boston, and Boston University complies with all, but not necessarily all renters and all landlords. So walk us through that.
Sure. So as we all know, it's been on the news. There was that tragic warehouse fire out in Oakland, California, and it was an artist's warehouse, but also a lot of them had lived there. So it was part workshop, part residential. Right now, what I heard recently, there's 36 deaths, 3 of which have ties to Massachusetts. And it was a 2-story building, and my understanding is investigators believe the fire began on the first floor. It trapped folks that were up on the second floor of the warehouse having a party, and I think I heard this morning on the news, I think it was a refrigerator malfunction, an electrical malfunction of some kind, and it basically spread. There was no other alternative means of egress, so everybody was trapped on the second floor, and there wasn't any fire safety equipment such as smoke alarms. No sprinklers, no smoke alarms, so it really wasn't until the smoke and the flames started coming up. So I apologize for that gruesome image there. But I bring that up because I happen to co-chair an organization called the Boston Town and Gown Association for the City of Boston, and it's a coalition that was formed back in 2008, and we meet roughly 3 times per semester. It's all of the schools that are in Boston, as well as the City of Boston Mayor's Office, Inspectional Services, the Attorney General's Office, Boston Police, and now we also have the Boston Fire Department, the Massachusetts Fire Marshal Association, and also another organization, or should I say an online newsletter called Campus Fire Watch. A gentleman named Ed Camo, he started Campus Fire Watch back in the year 2000, and it's grown. It was something that he just put out there for campus fire safety officials, for fire marshals, but now it's become what he calls a social enterprise to help get the word out, the safety message out to all the schools and colleges about campus fire safety. So he reached out to the Boston Town and Gown Association, and he wanted to talk more about fire safety, and he knew that I was going to be on this radio program today, and he wanted me to highlight 2 very basic things. Always identify 2 ways out, and that's if you're looking for an off-campus apartment, if you're going out to a movie theater or restaurant. It takes 2 seconds to just quickly identify, okay, I came in this way, there's another way that way, fantastic. Always know 2 ways out. And then more importantly, when you're going off campus, you want to have fully functional smoke alarms in every room. And this is something that I don't think students and even parents are really thinking about when they're looking at apartments off campus. You know, they're looking at the neighborhood, they're looking at, all right, the condition of it, what's amenities, what's the size of my bedroom, is it furnished, do I need to go buy furniture?
Do I have enough closets?
Exactly, exactly. Where, you know, where we're going to have the common space, have our friends over. They're thinking about everything but fire safety, and I understand that, I get that. It's not at the front of your mind. But I'm going to advise all of you to really think about when you're looking at off-campus apartments, you know, to look and see, are there smoke alarms in every room? Make sure that they've been tested. Find out when's the last time that particular unit was inspected by the City of Boston Inspectional Services Department. By law, every unit has to be inspected every 5 years. And if you contact the Inspectional Services Department, they will actually be able to tell you the history of that particular unit, when the last time it was inspected. And these are things you're going to want to work with the landlord on. I'm certainly not suggesting that you go behind the landlord's back. We want you to have a nice partnership, a relationship with your landlord. So if there's any outstanding concerns where a smoke alarm isn't working, you know, one of the rooms doesn't have 2 means of egress, and you know, you really don't want to move into it. And this is the case in a lot of units that I call it a split situation. So let's say it was a 1-bedroom, but it became a 2-bedroom split. So the living room maybe now has become the other bedroom, but there's only one way in and out of the bedroom. It's situations like that when it wasn't a traditional bedroom space that now has become a bedroom space, that you're not going to have those 2 means of egress. So if you're concerned about that, talk with the landlord, and if you feel like you're not getting the appropriate response, contact Inspectional Services. You can contact them at 617, I've got the number here, 617-635-5300. Again, that's 617-635-5300 to talk with City of Boston Inspectional Services. And for those of you that are looking at apartments in Brookline or Cambridge or Somerville, if you go to our website, those towns and cities have their own respective inspectional services divisions. We have links to that contact information on our website under the resources tab.
And to supplement what Kim said about those inspectional service division offices, whether it's Boston, Brookline, or Cambridge, in our abutting sort of neighborhoods, those also websites have great checklists.
Yes, they
of
do.
Things to consider before you rent, in terms of smoke detectors, heat sensors, sprinkles. Sometimes buildings are sprinkled, sometimes they're not, with sprinkler heads. CO2, carbon monoxide detectors. And when Kim was talking about 2 forms of egress, as an adult, I do that for every single room I walk into, whether it's a balcony or a window or heading down to a fire escape.
Exactly.
Many of our buildings in Boston University are old historic brownstones and townhouses and residences, and they have, you know, not necessarily balconies, but they have fire escapes.
Right.
You can't get out of a window if the window has bars on it.
Right.
And be mindful of that, because some of them do exist in the city of Boston. So
Sure.
I think that given the fact that you named a bunch of colleges and universities, public and private, and there are many, many more, there are tens of thousands of students that live in rental units all across the city in our dozen or 15 different neighborhoods. And parents and students need to be mindful that when they make that decision to move off campus, that those facilities and those units are up to par, up to speed, and are legal, because they all are not.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be a big surprise to an adult or to a mom or dad to know that some landlords try to take advantage of students. Sadly, they are, and when we certainly learn that, we can take them off our websites and we can sort of ban them, but one needs to know what kinds of questions to ask, because it's all about our number one concern is safety, 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 and all aspects of safety.
I think that's so important, and we can't underscore that enough. You also want to be very mindful of cleanliness.
Yes.
and that you're not getting yourself into a situation where there might be mold growing in an apartment.
Bed bugs, rodents, cockroach infestation, sure. So
and these things can really make you very sick. And it's, again, it goes back to knowing your rights as a leasee. So I just wanted to point that out, Kim.
No, that's really good. That's another thing to keep in mind in terms of safety, cleanliness. Obviously, there's a certain list of deliverables that the landlord or property owner has to meet on the day of move-in, and if they don't meet those deliverables, inspectional services will come on site, and they will have very, very brief turnaround time that they need to get that apartment up to code. They will also absorb hefty fines, which the fines cannot be passed on to the tenant. I want to make that very clear that the landlord or property owner cannot retaliate against the tenants should they choose to report to inspectional services for something. If they receive a code violation, that is not the fault of the tenant.
So the fines are issued to the landlord, the owner, or the management company?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue on.
Yeah, to the property owner. Exactly. And Daryl had just mentioned a fire safety checklist. Here's an example of one. My friend Ed over at Campus Fire Watch, he made this. And you might want to have one that is specific to the unit that you're going to be moving into. But if you go to the Campus Fire Watch website, you can download this for free. And their website is www.campus-firewatch.com.
So Kim, let's be realistic. You're outside of an apartment building. It's September 1st. Your U-Haul is loaded up. You're excited. You're ready to move in with your roommates. Begin the year. You take a step in there and you realize that there's black mold on the ceiling, or there's rodents, or there's a real issue. What do you do? How do you get inspectional services there while you're standing on the curb with all of your belongings?
Along with 4,000 other students in the area, because you're all moving in on September 1. That's the official moving day for the city, so it's a little bit chaotic.
Say that again in terms of when leases begin and when they end.
That's very important. So leases end, a 12-month lease. First of all, the lease is standard 12 months. It expires on August 31st. And the new lease starts September 1st. So it's a very quick turnaround time to move out and then move in. And also for the property owners, in defense of the property owners, they have to quickly turn over those units so that they're move-in ready. So it's a managed chaos, but it's certainly a very, very busy day for the property owners, for ISD, for students, for parents. So in that particular case, you get there and let's say the unit hasn't even been cleaned, and plus you also notice there's the mold, there's the mildew, there's rat droppings. This isn't what you saw when you first came to look at the apartment months ago.
The place is trashed.
Oh yeah.
Needs to be painted.
Yeah.
Ceiling's caved in. There's a leak in the bathroom.
Oh yeah, it's uninhabitable. For something like that, there is an app that you can download onto your iPhone or onto your Android device. I'll see if I can bring it up here. It's called Boston 311 or Boss 311.
Okay.
And it looks something like this. I don't know if you can get it there on the screen. But you can download it for free from the Apple Store or from the Google Play Store. And what's great during the move-in period, the last couple of weeks of August going into the first week of September, the City of Boston that manages this app, they will have a section. So what happens is you click on New Report, and there's all these different categories. Is it a seasonal concern, litter and trash, health hazards, so on and so forth. They add a separate and very prominent category, student move-in. You click on that, and you just start typing. You can take a photograph, and it'll actually geographically pinpoint the address where you are. You confirm it, you send it in. ISD inspectors are out in the neighborhoods. They are out there in force. They get that immediately, and they will show up and they will address the situation. So it's a very worthwhile app to get. I mean, I've even used it when there's potholes in the street or on the sidewalk, and I'm afraid a student's going to twist their ankle. I would say when about 24 to 48 hours, that pothole gets filled. I'm really impressed with this app. So it's the best way to get in touch for emergency situations like that during move-in day.
So don't ignore it. Don't say you can live with it. Don't say, oh, I'll clean it up. I'll go out and buy gloves.
And some people do. Some people do, yeah.
Right. But there's a resource.
Yeah.
And again, the landlord cannot retaliate.
Exactly.
You want to take care of yourself and your rights.
And Christy, in some cases, we oftentimes reference the landlord. Sometimes students' only contact is either with a realtor or with a management company.
Totally different from the landlord.
Totally different from the landlord.
Yeah.
Can you explain the differences there? Yep.
Sure. So the realtor or the broker or the real estate agent, they have a license. They're basically authorized salespeople. They have a license here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and they're the ones that do the legwork for the landlord or the property owner.
They represent them.
Exactly. They represent them. They're going to be representing a number of different properties for a number of different people. So they're the salesperson. They bring you to the property. You let them know what you're looking for, what your budget is, the type of neighborhood, the number of bedrooms, and they will do their best to show you places that fit your criteria. And then the contract, the lease, that's all handled through the realtor. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to want to charge what they call a broker's fee or a finder's fee because they want to get paid for their services. By law, the finder's fee or broker's fee cannot exceed the equivalent of 1 month's rent for that unit. So this goes back to the earlier point in the conversation, all the money that you have to give up front if you go through a broker. Basically, it's 4 months worth of rent, the broker's fee, then the first and last month that goes to the landlord, and then the security deposit, that goes to the landlord, and by law that has to be put into a separate, an escrow account that's not tied to the landlord's personal account, and you should get all of that money back, meaning the security deposit, at the time that you move out and you end your lease.
And that's also oftentimes equivalent to another month's rent, the security deposit.
Yep, so that's 4 months rent. Exactly.
So just to be clear, if I retain a realtor and they are showing me 3 bedrooms and 3 baths because I have 2 friends that are going to live with me, and we get to the first apartment and I love it. It's over on Boylston Street, it's in the Fenway, it's a high-rise new luxury building, it has a doorman, has security, and I say, sold, I'll take it. Do I still have to pay them even though they've only spent 1 hour with me, 1 month's rent?
Yeah. Yes, they can. They can definitely charge you for that.
So it's irrelevant whether they show me 1 unit or 17 units.
Exactly.
The same price, that $3,000 a month rent is going to be billed to me.
I'm cringing as I'm nodding my head because I've gotten some phone calls from some parents that say, well, wait a minute. In that particular case, my student, they just saw the first unit, they fell in love with it. They weren't even with the realtor for that long. Why do I have to pay them the full fee, as they kept calling it? Doesn't matter. It's the broker's fee is the broker's fee. And typically when you first go to meet with them, there's an application that you fill out, and there will be very fine print that lets you know what will be due should you decide to rent a particular apartment through them.
A very, very important factor, because I've heard that over and over and over again. So let's talk about folks and students and parents that decide, you know what, I don't want to run the risk of having to pay that egregious, enormous amount of one finder's fee, and I'm going to do this on my own.
No fee apartments, yes.
No fee apartments. There's even a name for it.
Well, there's a section with that name, no fee apartments, on Craigslist, which I was giving the no sign for Craigslist. If anybody calls and says, well, what do you think of Craigslist? I do not think very highly of Craigslist.
We don't recommend it.
No, we don't. And even in the no fee apartment section, a lot of, I don't want to say a lot because I don't want to demonize the realtors at all or the landlords, but a few of them will decide to post an apartment listed as no fee, but there actually is a fee once you finally get into the fine print with them. So the danger in going on Craigslist, whether it's for a fee or a no fee, is that there's a lot of scams that exist on Craigslist. And some of
Tell us what that means.
So I'll give you a prime example because it's come up quite a few times, unfortunately. Students will walk into my office about the first week in September, and they showed up from overseas. They found this apartment. They're from China. They found this apartment from overseas. They signed a lease, and when they, well, at least they thought they signed a lease. When they went on to Craigslist, there were photos of the apartment, so it looked legitimate. There was an address, and the address exists when you looked it up on Google Maps. There is a contact name of a person that actually exists, but the person's name is not the name of the scam artist, and I'll get more into that in a second. So they wire the money over. That was the condition, to wire all the money over, first month, last month's let's say there was no broker's fee, but just a security deposit. So let's say 3 months worth of rent up front, they wire over.
And the example that I had, Dean DeLuca, I'm paying $3,000 a month. That could be $6,000 or $9,000 that they have wired.
That they've wired over.
To
and
someone they do not know.
Exactly. And for those of you that are not familiar with wiring, it's essentially the same as handing money over to somebody, and it's very hard to trace and to get that money back. It's pretty much impossible if you ask any law enforcement agency. So they show up the day to move in, September 1. They're told it's available September 1. They go to the address that exists, the building, it matches the photograph that they saw online, but it's not available. And the person, the scam artist that they just picked a name, let's say they picked Kim Santo. Kim Santo was the person that advertised this unit. Well, Kim Santo, she's Assistant Director of Judicial Affairs. She's not a property owner. She's not a realtor. But it's a legitimate name. So in case the student that's in China is trying to do any background information, looking things up, oh, okay, this person exists. All right, they must be a property owner.
Sure. They have a Facebook account.
Exactly, exactly.
They're on LinkedIn.
It's a brilliant, brilliant crime. And the student will come into our office and they want to know, how do I get the money back? And it's a very sad conversation to say, well, you can file a report, but the likelihood of getting it back, you're not going to get it back. And two, they need a place to live. They're in desperation. We're trying to find a place to live.
And their classes have started.
Oh my God! My heart goes out to them because, and for a lot of them, this is the first time that they're coming over into Boston, and they're on the BU campus. As, hey, welcome to America, welcome to Boston. This is what happens. It's just, my heart really goes out to them.
Absolutely.
So what I'll do is, even though the website it's self-servicing, I will sit down with them at our kiosk in our office, and I'll walk through the website with them. And if English is a barrier, I'll even sit down and make phone calls for them on their behalf, just to try and get them connected with a property owner, something that's still available on the website. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So that's why, one of the many reasons we don't want you going on Craigslist.
So Kim gave the example of when a student shows up at her office on September 1st or the 2nd and indicating that the property doesn't exist. Christy and I have had examples of parents doing the exact same thing, wiring undisclosed amounts of money to a complete stranger, and then having their son or daughter show up at the residence, Back Bay, Brookline, Alston, Brighton, Fenway area, Beacon Hill, and while the building, the physical building and the address is there, there's no one there to meet them, even though they promised they would be there. There's no other contact information. There's no management or realtor's office to follow up with. And then sadly, the mom and dad or the parent who wired that money, it's gone. And we have sadly too many stories to share, but we say that because we do not want anyone, Boston University family member, community, student, parent, guardian, to become a victim of that kind of crime.
Absolutely. And as you've both said, we've seen it time and time again. Another thing I wanted to mention, as a parent, if you're in California, Hawaii, China, wherever you call home, and you're sending your student to Boston and they're going to live off campus, how do you know where to look? What city, what town, what neighborhood? And as a mom, I'm feeling some angst, is this going to be a good neighborhood? Is my student going to be safe? Can they walk home at night by themselves? Are they going to get robbed? Is their, apartment going to be broken into?
Will the BU shuttle bus take my son or daughter to their off campus?
Absolutely. Is there public transportation nearby? So can you help advise parents as to how to find out about these neighborhoods and how to steer their cherub into selecting a good neighborhood?
Sure. First of all, it's really good if you are asking a lot of those questions about public transportation. How far is it from the campus? Is it safe? I think that's fantastic. If you're thinking along those lines already. So when you go to our website, we also have there should be a tab for neighborhoods and neighborhood descriptions. I can tell you right now, these are the neighborhoods that you're probably going to look at. So if your student is going to be taking classes on the Charles River campus where we are, it's the main campus of BU, versus the medical campus, which I'll get to in just a moment. Charles River campus, you're going to look at popular neighborhoods are Alston and Brighton, which is just past West Campus, okay? Now, the Alston and Brighton neighborhood, besides being popular with BU students, also Boston College, believe it or not, Emerson College, Berkeley College of Music, a lot of students, they tend to go up to that neighborhood, yeah. And they all live together, which is great. Yay, we don't, you know, we want BU students to be living with everybody else. So, so they'll be up there in the neighborhoods, and the way that those students get back to even at least the West Campus to catch the BU shuttle bus, they can either walk, depending upon how deep they are to Alston or to Brighton, or there's also the 57 bus line, which is part of the MBTA. There's the Green Line, the B line, the trolley, part of the MBTA. They can take that as well. If you have a car, a lot of the properties up there, they'll either have parking spaces if it's a house that's been converted into a dwelling unit, so it'll be a driveway, or you get the parking permit to park on the street, or you make other arrangements to park your car. So that's Alston and Brighton, very popular with the undergrads. The rent tends to be, I don't want to say cheap. I'm hesitant to say that because
nothing is inexpensive in Boston.
Right.
oh no, it's very expensive. But to cut down on costs, what students will do is they'll be living with a lot of roommates. Now, what you need to keep in mind is there is a ordinance, the City of Boston, and this is just for Boston, not Brookline, not Somerville, but this is just for Boston, which includes Alston and Brighton. Those are neighborhoods of Boston. There's an ordinance that says no more than 4 undergraduate students may dwell in the same unit. So a lot of students don't realize that, and that's another reason why students that, let's say if they're living in a large house, and let's say there's 7, 8, 9, 10 undergrads all living together, but they're having some maintenance issues. There's a landlord that's not being very responsive to their needs, or the property management company is hard to contact. Well, if any one of them become aware of this ordinance, they're afraid to call inspectional services because they're afraid, oh no, they're going to discover there's more than 4 of us here, they're going to evict us.
Right.
Well, I'm happy to report the City of Boston Inspectional Services will not evict you. They're going to have a very stern conversation with the property owner, who is going to have to somehow make arrangements to basically house you, split you up. In the meantime, I would suggest, if that's the case, that you're no longer going to be able to live there, you're going to need to start looking for someplace else to live. So I'm bringing this up now so that as you're looking for places to live, don't get yourself stuck in that situation where there's going to be more than 4 of you.
I'm living with 9 guys or 9 women, or you know, we're trying to reduce the rent so that it is a little bit on the more inexpensive.
Exactly, and that's understandable. And you know, there's a lot of large houses that are in that area, so you know, per square footage per person, it works out just fine. But again, if you're in violation of this ordinance, it could be problematic down the line. You're not going to get kicked out onto the street, but at some point, something's going to need to happen there legally. So if there's a house where there's 4 undergrads, but then the other 5 or 6 people, they're all graduate students or young professionals, no problem. It just relates to 4 undergrads, no more than 4 undergrads living together.
And that's a City of Boston ordinance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not part of the sanitary code. This is a separate ordinance. Okay, so that's part 1, and that's neighborhood 1, Alston Brighton. You also have Brookline, which is adjacent to our South Campus neighborhood here.
And just south of the Charles River campus.
Exactly. And it's sort of going in between, well, if you think of it this way, between here and also the BU Medical Center. Also on the way to the BU Medical Center, you've got South Boston, there's the Back Bay neighborhood, which takes in Copley Square, Fenway, Kenmore neighborhood, Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill, you're going to find a lot of Suffolk University students up in Beacon Hill. There's the North End. And then going across the river north of us, we have MIT and Harvard. You also have Somerville. You have, obviously, Cambridge. There's Arlington. So depending upon how far out you want to go, there's a lot of options that are open to you. And you should know that the further away you're getting from the center of the City of Boston, the rent tends to go down a little bit. Not a lot, but we have some students that are even living further south of the city in Quincy. They'll come in by way of the Red Line. It's one of the high-speed lines on the MBTA. So the rents tend to be a little bit cheaper there. So,
And Will, you reminded me of a story from a mom whose son wanted to live a little bit further off campus, and you know, she said, okay, great, but let's be practical about this. I want you to go to the train station. We get out of class, go to that train station, take that train all the way to where you're going to live, and then take it back. And on the day that she gave this advice, it was snowing.
Ah.
And so he
yes.
did just that. He went to his potentially new apartment, came back to campus and said, Mom, I don't want to move off campus. I don't want to make that trek in the winter and the cold and the snow and the rain.
What a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
It's really
That's
good
brilliant.
advice. And for someone who commutes every day, I want to throw that out there. It's something to consider
Yeah.
because it impacts. You know, are you going to be able to go to class and then go home and grab a cup of coffee or a lunch? Or are you going to, you know, fill your backpack with everything you need to do?
For the
Go
day,
to class, go to fit rec, go to class, you know, grab a meal because you're stuck on campus all day because you couldn't possibly have the time to make the trek back to your apartment. So you really want to think about how worthwhile that's going to be. Is it really going to benefit you?
Absolutely.
Christy, that's a great point, and we're just getting the sign that we have to wrap
Yes.
up, I think. So
Wow.
we're going to close out, but the point is, do your homework
Yes.
and contact us and take advantage of the resources.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we wish you all a very joyous, happy, healthy, and prosperous holiday season and New Year.
Daryl, before we wrap
Yep.
up, I promised I would make this point, and it's so important. If your student moves off campus, there is absolutely no guarantee that they can move back on campus.
Good. Yep.
Thank
It's
you.
so important, so please consider that as a factor.
Great.
Great.
Thank you, and best
Thank you.
wishes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.